You're listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the AV-IT Amplifier. And we have an amazing one for you today. Not only do you get to hear our lovely voices, but today is an opportunity you might get to see our lovely faces as well. And I am getting to welcome a guest that I've wanted to talk to for some time, and I'm so glad he's on. Mr. Daryl Krall, would you please introduce yourself? Who are you, and what do you do?
That is a great question, Ryan. I sometimes ask myself that on a regular basis. But so I'm Daryl Krall. I've been with Panasonic, kind of heading up the higher education efforts and other things for over 13 years. But I have been in this crazy AV-IT industry for over 25 years. And so it's just one of my favorite places to be, and just excited to talk with you. I know you and I were together on campus at Yavapai about a year ago now, which is one of my most favorite campuses because it's beautiful and you're there, and it's just a great place to spend some time. So number one thing, if you get a chance to go up to Prescott and enjoy that campus, please visit Ryan for sure.
That's awesome. So you stole my thunder because you're fine. My first bullet point here was, besides my wife, who has already been a guest on this podcast, you are the first guest who has set foot at Yavapai College. So, which is where I am right now. And so thank you for calling that out. And I will just say, for us, there is kind of two levels of people. There are the people that, have taken the time to come all the way to see us and meet our team, and those who say they care about us, but, they've never done that. And so we thank you for that, Daryl. I really appreciate it.
It was a beautiful day. I'm pretty sure pretty much every day is a beautiful day on campus there. But so Ryan, how many years, because I don't remember off the top of my head, how many years have you been at Yavapai?
Appreciate it. It's 10, I passed 10 the day after the Super Bowl. So we're about, I always remember my start date. So 10 and a half now, going on 11. So it's gone fast. But yeah, that's
time
awesome.
Flies when you're having fun. That's for sure.
Well, the door remains open anytime, you know what I'm saying, you would like to come back. So
exactly.
Let's start then in that you said, obviously you work at Panasonic currently and have for a while, right? And concentrate on higher ed. Why? Panasonic sells stuff to a lot of people. You could be selling electric razors,
sure,
all the other things,
rice cookers,
all those things. So why, and I know, you're an AV person and always have been. So why higher ed? Why is this the market that you've stuck to?
I think it's not just me. I mean, I certainly have an affinity, as I think everybody knows, for higher education. I was an adjunct faculty member for a number of years, even while being in the AV industry. But to me, it's a very important vertical. It has been for years, and Panasonic recognized that a long, long time ago. I mean, literally, Panasonic's been in classrooms for over 50 years now. But what's interesting for me personally is just the way that, and Panasonic was always calling on higher education, working with higher education. I wouldn't say we were dabbling, but we were pretty engaged. Mm-hmm. But we only had like projectors and displays, and if you wanted PTZ cameras. So it wasn't a concentrated effort. And probably about 10 years ago, it became much more of a focus to say, look, you talk to Ryan, and Ryan needs these different types of things, pro audio and PTZ cameras, and, kind of pull it all together. And that's what I've really enjoyed, that Panasonic, even at the factory, I was on a call last night with our factory members talking about some upcoming higher education shows like ETC at USC. And we're like, well, can we do this? And can we do that? So one of the things that I've truly enjoyed, certainly with Panasonic, is that the fact that, not only do the US, our team, understand the importance of higher education and all the different things that we do, because sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I can go to Panasonic for a Blu-ray player and a camcorder and a, some shaver or something. But, the way on our commercial side is what's called our PIVS. So it's professional imaging and visual systems.
Mm-hmm.
So projectors and displays and PTZ cameras and, lots of different things, pro audio. So now it's like, okay, Panasonic, we can kind of help you. Anything that's on campus, we can kind of help and provide some of those solutions and some guidance too, because we've been doing it for such a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Like a tentpole person or tentpole company in this space, and really branched out. I know you don't want to use the word ecosystem yet, but it seems like that's where everybody wants to be. Is you don't need to mix and match anymore. You can build your whole classroom out of us. Is that kind of where you guys want to make sure you're positioned?
Yeah, and we started that literally pre-pandemic because, for many, many years, it's like, go to the different, this business unit here gets you that, and this Panasonic business unit can get you this. And literally pre-pandemic, we started pulling it all together. So for the last couple of Infocoms, and we showed a great couple of presentations at Infocom about our connected classroom, which is, you're absolutely right, Ryan, that ecosystem. So from our, ceiling microphones to our Dante audio and controlling, we've got voice triggered presets in our PTZ cameras. It's all there. So anything that's in the classroom fundamentally can be Panasonic. And when it's all one manufacturer, it's going to work, very well together. Panasonic has been around for over 100 years. And our reliability is across the board, whether it's our, mobility tough books or, all of our projectors that have been around. We've been doing laser projectors since 2012. So we're in our 11th year of laser projectors. So, we just kind of have that affinity towards higher education. I love how another great thing that I enjoy working in higher education is it's always changing, right? Even before the pandemic, there was this convergence of AV, IT. Oh, what a great name for a show.
Yeah, there you go.
But,
it's very inclusive. It's inclusive of everybody.
Exactly. And that's one of the things where it's never a dull moment. I remember, this goes way back. I was in at a university in Milwaukee. I can name them only because they're a great customer, but literally going into the AV department, which wasn't in the basement, surprisingly.
Wow.
But they had literally like a security camera from 1980 that they were using just to see when somebody was walking in to say, oh, I need some help or I need this. But it was a Panasonic security camera from like 1980, still worked, still looked good. And even there's so many other campuses where I swear it was probably about 5 years ago. The old Panasonic used to make the combined CRT TV with VHS machine combo, and they were still in classrooms. You're like, oh my gosh, that's just amazing. So it's been a lot of fun, even though obviously all of our lives have changed a lot, and it's just the technology that's going in the classrooms, the expectations of the students has changed dramatically. So
no, you're totally right about all that. We have, just real quick, we have one CRT television still on our campuses. It's because it got put in. They were doing, this is before I was there, video conferencing from greenhouse to greenhouse on two different greenhouses. So there were TVs in there, and it's mounted on a column that's inside a giant fish koi pond. So it's way too much of a pain to go get.
No one's gonna, it's exactly.
Now just
Do they still use it, or just a decorative thing?
No. Yeah, no, it's just there. It's a spider-like den. Like, it's just the worst. But I look at it like someone should really get that out of here, and I don't want to be the one to invent the way to do that without
go up in the ladder. You put your wetsuit on, and then you get a ladder, and you get if it's on a column. But that is hysterical.
Yeah, no, it's pretty funny.
Okay, now what do we do?
I'll get a picture of it. I'll put it out with this episode because it's worth it's kind of a mascot for us now. So I love. Okay, so you mentioned in your intro, Panasonic, you do higher ed and other things. What are the other things? Because we interface with you all the time in higher ed spaces. So what all has Panasonic pulled you in to do?
It's amazing. So we have a great team. So between our projectors, pro audio, PTZ cameras, I would say higher education is probably the largest vertical specifically for us, but we do a lot in house of worship. We do a lot in enterprise. We do a lot in the public sector. I don't specifically have responsibility, but our overall group works with themed parks.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun for
Yeah.
one of my colleagues, Jared Derensberg and
Mhm.
Dan Meehan and other colleagues. But Panasonic is the projection technology partner for Disney.
Yeah.
So if you've been to Disney and gone on the Star Wars ride, or you watch when they're projecting on Cinderella's castle or something like that,
Mhm.
that's mostly Panasonic technology. So that's a lot of fun. But for me specifically, I'd say house of worship, rental and staging, which is
Mhm.
live events and
Yep.
things like that, and then corporate, because corporate, believe it or not, still uses a lot of different technologies in their conference rooms, and now we're with remote work and things like that. So a lot of those verticals keep us very, very busy, but certainly higher education is near and dear to my heart.
Cool. Well, we're glad that you've stuck with us all this time. So I know you live in Chicago, or out near
Yeah,
Chicago,
in
somewhere
Chicago,
kind of
yes. Yeah.
central to the country. So what does a day in and day out look for you? Are you a home office and hit the road when I need to sort of lifestyle, or
No.
on any given day you could find Daryl almost anywhere?
The great thing about living in Chicago is I can get pretty much anywhere within 4 hours,
Yeah.
whether it's east or west. And so, during the pandemic, it was kind of interesting those first couple of months. I'm like, wow, kind of getting used to this remote work thing and
Mm-hmm.
everything. But then I would say early 2021, things were picking up. Not everything was open, but we started traveling. I started traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
And even now in 2023, I actually have traveled more miles so far only in the first 8 months of the year than I did in 2019 pre-pandemic.
Wow.
So for me, we travel back and forth. Our corporate office is in Newark, New Jersey. So I used to go there on a regular basis, but now it's really customer meetings. And I try and, plan out 2 weeks in advance to say, okay, or certainly with conferences, I know I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the next month or whatever it is. But really, I'd say travel has picked up more than what we've seen since the pandemic, and because people are happy to see you, willing to see you,
Yeah.
want to learn, catch up, see the product and demonstrate it and everything. So yeah, and I have a team of 8 territory account managers. My counterpart, Paul DiLorenzo, he has 7. So yeah, we've got a lot of territory account managers. And if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
your Panasonic territory account manager, please let me know. We can definitely connect and get you connected with the right person, because that's really what we enjoy. And pretty much our entire team is that way, that they're, trying to plan to see everybody at least quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
And then typically, more often when bigger projects come up. And of course, it's summertime and things are not winding down, but it's, okay, now things are, like you said, classes starting here next week for you
Yep.
guys. Thank goodness. Hopefully everything went well. And that's been, just a wonderful thing for us, is that we are local. So if you need me at Notre Dame, if you need me at Northwestern, if you need me at Indiana University,
Right.
I'm there in 2 hours, 3 hours. And then same thing with the rest of our team. They're ready, willing, and able to go on campus and say, "Hey, you're having an issue. You want help getting that CRT down? We'll get
Don't.
Jared Derensberg over there. He'll
That's
get
what
on
I
the
was
ladder.
gonna
He'll
say.
pull that thing down."
Speaking of another person who's been to our campus, right? Jared is,
That's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would not do that to you guys, or
I would do it just for the fun of it. If you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go. I would take it as a personal
Oh
challenge
man.
to
So all
get
right.
that sucker down.
So mess with some future rep from someplace. All right, you really want to come out? Here's what you got to. Oh my. Yeah, I can. I don't. It's
Yep.
not. It's that would just be too mean. Okay, so you're
But
putting
send
in.
pictures. I want to see the
I
pictures.
will.
That's for
I'll
sure.
get it. It's pretty good. Okay, so obviously on the road, you're road warrior. So give us your hacks. If you're flying all the time, what are you doing right about frequent travel that the rest of us are just bumbling through?
I don't know. Weather is always the unknown, right? But if you don't have TSA pre-check, you
Oh
have
man.
to get TSA pre-check.
Never and never again will I know. Oh my
Exactly.
gosh.
And it
Absolutely.
was funny coming back from Orlando. I had an early flight, so I was at the airport at 5 a.m. and I've flown out of Orlando a number of times. thought I knew. I saw the TSA pre-check. I'm going. And all of a sudden I'm in this line and I was in the wrong line. And I still had a lot of time and everything, but literally I was going through. It took over 20 minutes. It was interesting because we had a lot of our Japanese colleagues in the same line.
Right.
But anyway, funny story. So I'm like, well, son of a gun. And I go up, he's like, and the TSA person or the security person's like, this isn't TSA pre-check. I'm like,
Right.
I just waited 20 minutes in line. Do I really? He's like, you can go over there, but you have to go to the back of the line. Fine. I went through anyway. It was fine. But it was just kind of funny.
Did you have to take your shoes off?
Yeah. Computer out. Took my shoes off.
Well, no.
Thank God I wasn't wearing sandals and I had socks on.
There you go. Exactly. Never again. Well,
it's hard. I mean, if you can be loyal to like airlines or a hotel, that certainly helps because you can typically use that. In fact, we're taking my family to Europe here soon and using some points, not all points, but yeah, the loyalty programs, the TSA pre-check. It's interesting because I used to rent a car every single time, and now it's like, you know what? That extra half hour to go pick up the car, and then the extra half hour to go return the car, even though Uber might be a tad bit more expensive depending upon how long you're at whatever location, it actually can be a little bit more time efficient to use like an Uber or Lyft kind of service because just like having your own freedom is great, but that half hour on the front end and half hour on the back end when you're always running late anyway,
exactly.
It's really tough.
Okay. So that's good advice. And yeah, if you get too many points somewhere, you need to give them away. You know what I'm saying? Just you could throw
exactly. I could gift them. I will gift them to the Ryan Gray Foundation.
Yeah. So I worked in live event before higher ed. I used to travel a ton. So yeah, the family, like it was like, where are we going? No problem. Here's a hotel, here's a whatever. And now I don't have as much of that anymore. So you know what I'm saying? I gotta figure that out.
And speaking of that, because I remember you and I talked about this a little bit as I was thinking about our conversations today, that was the other thing I thought is interesting is that a lot of people in the AV business, not just higher ed, but a lot in higher ed, came from that creative or music background or entertainment background. Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, I can get a real job here and get paid a little bit better. Sometimes the hours aren't as good. Not that rock and roll hours or, entertainment hours are good, but at least it was a little bit more consistent. There's peaks and valleys, but it's amazing how many people like you and myself as well started in this business in either the production or creative or entertainment side. And here we are so many years later. It's like still using those creative juices, but just in a different way.
Yeah. Using them to help people learn stuff. I love it. Yes. You know what I'm saying? That's better than putting on giant events for pharmaceutical companies. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. I get a little more quality of life out of putting my time and talent to learning than selling drugs and law firms and stuff.
That's true.
So I appreciate all of those clients that I have.
They do yeoman's work. That's for sure.
That's right. Okay. All right. So then let's cover two higher ed orgs that I know you're involved in. And first, let's talk HETMA. And the thing that I know to be legendary about Panasonic and HETMA is that HETMA was born in Japan on a trip sponsored by Panasonic. And I've heard the story told from a number of people in a number of ways, but what is it like on that? We'll get to HETMA, and you've been an early supporter, but working for a company that is, like you mentioned, Japanese counterparts that were at that, a company that's kind of owned headquarters in Japan, and you're part of a team that is representing, the United States. Has that been culturally interesting, challenging? What's the experience of working in a company like that?
It's really interesting because, pre-pandemic, we would try, not every year, but try to take a group of higher education institutions to Japan. And I would say since I started with Panasonic in 2010, it was pretty close to every year. So that particular trip with Joe Way, BC Hatchett, Dean Wentworth, and the list, Jackie Wolf, and others were just a great trip. And so that was March of 2018. And I believe my Japanese counterparts always look forward to those conversations. Sometimes there's not a language barrier, but we started recording those probably in like 2015 because I always try and take copious notes.
Right.
We typically would walk in and we can, pull up some photos of going into the typical, okay, you travel. What was also unique about that trip, that was the first trip where we said, let's get everybody to Los Angeles And because there were
Go
people
together.
coming from the Northeast, from the South, wherever, we had everyone meet up in LA and then flying out of LAX and then flew over together.
Nice.
Because otherwise, you have somebody from Rochester coming all by themselves or whatever. So that was like one of the big like aha moments for me, because sometimes you had travel delays and you're going back and forth to Narita, the airport, whatever. So they all came across on the same flight and started to collaborate immediately.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of those people will tell you the same thing, that they were best friends, even though I think most of them hadn't really met each other, maybe BC and Joe, but not intimately involved. By the time they hit the shores in Japan, they were already firing on all cylinders. They were great friends, great collaborators, and that was really exciting. So we got to the corporate office. We kind of do some tours. Hey, here's where we're going to be. Here's what we're going to do. And then we go into kind of an executive board meeting room. And so you probably have 10 higher education members, and then probably 20 of Panasonic Japanese taking notes, videotaping. And so just then in each school would do like a short presentation. Here's what we're doing. Here's some of our challenges. And it was just a really great way to collaborate and get conversations going. And so that to me is invaluable. And I know our factories totally understand and respect that if we don't have that dialogue, like if you look at HETMA's, advisory councils, and we have our own Panasonic, which I know, Ryan, you're a member and many others are, of our advisory council, having that great dialogue and communication, good, bad, and otherwise. If we're doing something wrong and we don't know about it, then we'll just continue to make the same mistakes. But saying, Daryl or Panasonic, this is not really what we need, and what can we do to improve upon it? So
that's it. And it was, if you happen to work for a higher ed institution and have budget power, like the power of people traveling together and being together out of the office is where those things that will never happen otherwise, where sometimes it's such a challenge on the costs and things like that. But man, the things like HETMA get born when people are out of their norm and thinking different. And that's where, those types of conversations where higher ed people can influence what's going to get made and then understand what's coming, from manufacturers like Panasonic. So we can build it into there's just no substitute for people being able to be together outside of their norm to get actual innovation, to change the way things are done. So that's my pitch to throw out there to everybody.
And I totally agree. The great example of that was, we had, for those of you old enough to remember Ramza Audio, which Ryan, you probably don't remember that. Maybe, okay.
I helped put Ramza speakers in a church for church venue one time.
Yes, definitely in a house of worship. But anyway, so that was always Panasonic. So we were doing, audio for a long time. We never had branded audio product in the US after Ramza's brand went away. So that was the same trip, and there's video floating around on the interwebs of it is fine today. So we had some new audio product that we showed to that group that went to Japan in 2018, and it was okay. I mean, we're using DECT technology, so you're not susceptible to UHF interference and whatever frequency changes and so forth. But the audio quality was okay, not great. But then we came back. And so literally it was at the CCUMC event in, that was in Utah that year, 2018. And they brought 8 engineers back. We got more customer feedback, but we actually made significant improvements. So that just kind of shows you that the customer feedback from, the higher education market is so important, because we don't always get things right, but we will always strive to improve on what we have and what makes best sense and most sense for the higher education vertical.
Cool. Well, and one other question. Let's say I wanted to get a Panasonic projector in HETMA green. Is that a possible thing to do?
Absolutely. And that was the great...
Can you prove it, Daryl?
Yes, I could prove it, because I have a picture. If you go to the Twitters or you go to our LinkedIn, maybe we flash that screen. That was just so funny, because we were so excited about HETMA number one having a booth at Infocom. Come on, really?
Yeah.
So incredible. And then we're like, let's do the beach ball thing, and a lot of other manufacturers supported, which is wonderful. But then I kind of knew that HETMA green was a thing, and we basically had our 20,000 lumen LCD laser projector in our booth. And I know you've seen it, but others might. We'll throw that photo up.
I'll tag that in it too.
Exactly. With Hank Reed, one of our wonderful, brilliant territory account managers, with a Hetma beach ball
Hmm.
sponsored by Panasonic, right next to the Hetma Green projector. So we can actually paint projectors, which
Hmm.
doesn't void the warranty. We can put your logo, either the Yavapai
Yep.
logo, onto or stencil it on. So back in the day, people used to do that manually, like with spray cans. You're like, oh no, you just voided the warranty. Don't do
Don't do
that.
that.
I know.
Yeah.
And so we're like, yeah, we could do that with projectors. We could do that with PTZ cameras. I know that University of Michigan is a big user of our Pro Audio product.
Hmm.
And so we have the branded little square sleeves that go on there. So it's got the University of Michigan
Michigan.
logo. Yeah, excuse me. And so, those are some great things that we do, especially in higher education. You want to brand your rooms.
Hmm.
And this is the thing we talked about 2 InfoComs ago. Most institutions have alum, right? That's how they kind of get some extra money. But wouldn't you like to see a Ryan Gray endorsed, or, because if you're alum or not alum, you just have that person's name on the projector.
Right.
And because I want to do that at Northwestern, where both my wife and I and our 2 daughters graduated from. So it's like, I want that purple Daryl Krall Panasonic projector with Jeff Pra or Trevor and Troy Powers.
Yeah.
Troy can get me a room to just say, hey, Troy, can you help me out here?
That's
I need a room that's a purple projector with Daryl Krall sponsored.
perfect.
Daryl and Joan Krall sponsored by. And
Technology in this room brought to you by. Yeah.
that's right.
That's awesome.
Annie, Katie, Joan, and Daryl Krall. Boom. Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. So, okay. Then let's talk. You mentioned CCUMC, now ETC, and this is an organization that you are a board member of.
Yes.
So if people haven't heard of this org, how did you get involved in it, and why do you remain involved in it?
It's one of those institutions. They've been around since 1971, which is just amazing. So if you went to ccumc.org, and then that'll take you to the new ETC member click. And they started out of Indiana University, being based in Chicago. I knew about them, started getting involved before I was actually with Panasonic.
Right.
And remember specifically 2012, I was kind of heading up our specific higher education group efforts. And I said, we've got to be involved. Another gentleman, Art Rankin and Frank Cavelli, going back in the day, were very involved with that too. But we just got involved from day one. And it was such a great organization because it goes from different campuses each year. And you'd go from Portland to Boston to Florida to, Texas. And so obviously the conference, the ETC conference that's coming up at USC in September is exciting. But the reason why I've always been involved with Panasonic since 2010, but got on the board like right before the pandemic. So it's been about 4 to 5 years now, just because it's such a great organization. I think it's opened up. So it's not just so institutional member focused. It's like we have our corporate members. So other manufacturers are involved and they're on board. So we can have, I think, a greater impact for the overall higher education vertical and individuals, because you build lifelong relationships. I'd say between HETMA and ETC, that's really the number one reason why you'd want to get involved, no matter if you're an institutional member or a manufacturer or just somebody who's interested in technology, a student. I want to talk a little bit more about how do we get younger people involved, and maybe that rolls into the next episode. Yeah. That's one of the great things. These are specific organizations for higher education, and they're very welcoming. They're very inclusive. And it's not something where it's like, well, I really don't know anybody. You go to a conference or you just join and you can start to meet people immediately. HETMA can be virtual, and then you see them at InfoComm, or ETC. You can just join. There's a conference in the clouds and different events in the cloud, but then they have their now in-person conferences back. So yeah, those are the types of organizations. And for me personally, I get such a great appreciation for the trials and tribulations of what's happening in higher education, but also trying to help as a board member. How can we be a better organization to grow our positive footprint to help new people get into the business, or people who have been in the business for a while and just want to improve their skill set or learn some new skills and meet more people, network, and have a good time doing it too.
Exactly. So yeah, I have 4 of my team members getting their travel stuff together for the USC conference today. We were just talking through that part. First time at that conference for each of the 4. So I'm very excited about that, because I've gotten, so yeah, hetma.org, ccumc.org, hit those up and see. So then one final question, EDUCAUSE is in Chicago this year. It's coming right to your backyard. Any chance I'll see you there?
Yes, I will be there.
All right.
It's interesting that we used to exhibit on a fairly regular basis. And then we didn't for a while, but basically you will see me in Chicago and we will have some good things happening.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. Cool. Okay. So then before we wrap this part up, Daryl, if people wanted to find out more about you, about Panasonic, about connecting on some of these things that you've talked about, you do such a great job. I mean, I feel like I learned things about the Panasonic product line I didn't even know. You can just get those answers right in there. You know what you're doing. How would they find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best. So Daryl, Darryl, Krall, Krall. For our Panasonic website, you go to nancyapple.panasonic.com, and that takes you to everything. But basically, you can find where it says, professional projectors, and there's some product category groups, and we've got great higher education case studies and other vertical case studies. Those are probably the 2 best places, LinkedIn and na.panasonic.com.
Cool. Well, Daryl, thank you for chatting with me, sharing about those sorts of things. And yeah, we have never ordered a custom color projector here, but I feel like I know I was thinking through our construction project that we're in programming for right now. Like that would blow their mind if we did that. And that would be cool. I bet our marketing people would pick up any cost difference. So I'm very excited about that.
And it's not that expensive either. Exactly.
No, exactly. Compared to the thing. Well, Daryl, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Ryan, my pleasure. This is great.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Tune in next week for more with today's guest. It'll be great, or your money back. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by HigherEdAV.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.